A new podcast featuring California City is coming out next week, and this morning we have the host of that podcast, Emily Guerin. She is joining us to talk more about it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
First of all, can you begin by telling us what is the focus of your podcast?
Sure. So the podcast is sort of this exploration of the history of California City and how the history influences the present. So many of you might know that California City is this sort of very large, kind of sprawling, empty feeling city in eastern Kern County with about 14,000 people. And when you go, it's very striking. There's a lot of sort of empty roads that sort of seemingly lead to nowhere. And this is because the city was kind of the vision of this real estate developer in the 50s to build a huge new city from scratch in the desert. And he sold land to tens of thousands of people all around the world. And very few of those people ever moved there. And sort of that history of the city has a lot of repercussions for the city's present and for a company that up until very recently was still continuing to sell this dream of California City as this place that was going to boom. And if you invested now, you could get rich.
What were some of the things that you found during your investigation talking with people out there?
Well, I think that, there's a lot of people who I found who, like, their parents or their grandparents had bought land out there and they inherited it and they had no idea where the property was. And they'd heard stories over the years of, how their parents had been invited out there by a friend and sort of given this high pressure sales pitch and, felt pressured into buying land and they never knew what to do with it. It never seemed to be of much value. And that story just sort of continued over generations. So I met people who had a very similar experience pretty recently and people for whom this was their grandparents' experience back in the 60s. So there's a legacy of sort of selling this vision in this place.
Well, how many different groups have tried to sell this vision that you're talking about?
Well, so I focus on two because they're connected. I focus on the initial developer. He's a man named Nat Mendelsohn, and a company he created. And then I focus on a different company that began selling land in the early 80s called Silver Saddle Ranch and Club. And the president, or the former president of that company, had previously worked for Nat Mendelsohn's company. So there was this connection between the two. I have heard just through reporting, or I know through reporting out there, that there are a lot of other sort of land salespeople and real estate sort of speculative pitches there, but I just focused on these two.
And how many episodes will this podcast run?
So it will be 7 episodes. You can listen to the trailer now wherever you get your podcasts, so Spotify or Google or Apple. And the first episode comes out on Monday.
And is there anything you really hope to expand on from anything you found out through your investigation in California City?
Well, I'm continuing to follow. There's actually state regulators that are looking into Silver Saddle Ranch and Club right now for securities fraud. So I'm continuing to follow that case as it proceeds through the courts.